This episode of Problem Solved is brought to you by the Poye Group, boutique consultants unlocking organizational potential with custom, results-driven solutions. Learn more at thepoyegroup.com.
Here's the problem. AI is evolving faster than most organizations can keep up, and the risks of falling behind are real. So how do we solve this? How do leaders and engineers harness AI's potential without losing the human touch? How can we embrace AI as a powerful collaborator rather than fearing it?
It can do good things at scale. It can do bad things at scale.
Mike Courtney, futurist and CEO of Aperio Insights, joins IISE's David Brandt to unpack how AI is unfolding at scale and how industrial and systems engineers can prepare to lead through this shift. This is Problem Solved, the IISE podcast.
Mike, thanks for joining us on Problem Solved.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me, David.
Before we get into our main topic, you describe yourself as an ethnographer and a futurist. Mm-hmm. Can you give some insight on what those roles are and how they inform the work that you do for a living?
Sure. So, I typically say that I'm a researcher, futurist, ethnographer, in some order. But basically, the research and ethnography is about understanding what people do today. When you do research, sometimes you can rely on them telling you what they do. When you do ethnography, you see what they do. I may say that I go to the gym 3 times a week, but then somebody who's doing ethnography and watches might go, it's not quite 3, is it? But then the foresight is simply looking beyond what we do today into the things that we might do tomorrow, the possibilities, so to speak.
All right. You study consumer behavior and what motivates change in your work. When you look at how AI is transforming work today, what's the biggest behavioral shift you're observing in businesses and organizations? Are there sectors undergoing more monumental shifts than others?
There are sectors that are experiencing AI differently and or experiencing larger chunks of it before other sectors. Some of that's because they want to. Some of that they're leaning in saying, give me, I want it, let's do it. And others because they're like, yeah, we'll get there, keep the door locked right now, and we'll eventually figure out when we want to and let it enter. So different organizations, different sectors always experience things differently, whether it was the internet, whether it was, electricity. I mean, some sectors like now are good. Other sectors like, no, I want it now. So it's normal to have a somewhat uneven rollout of AI. That's not unusual, I think.
Well, speaking of rollout, when we first discussed having an interview on the podcast, you said that the introduction of AI can allow us to solve problems at an unprecedented rate, but also create problems at an unprecedented rate. Can you unpack that paradox? What does it mean for industrial and systems engineers or anyone in other professions in terms of how they should approach AI integration and implementation?
Yeah. And so, if you got time for a quick story, when I was in high school, I had a car old car, and I waxed it one day because I was like, I want to make it nice. I want to clean it up. And the paint back then wasn't as good as today's paint. There were all these little chips. And if you remember using the white paste wax, and would get in all those little chips, I was like, okay, I spent all the energy waxing the car. How am I going to get these little wax chips out of the paint chips? I said, I know, I'll take it. And I'll spend good hard-earned money to go through the car wash. Took the car wash, ran it through, still had all this little white chips in there. And I was like, I still don't want to take it home and do it myself. Maybe they'll run it through again. So I took it back around. I told the guy, hey, I'm not happy at all. Look at all the wax that's still in there. And this guy was really, really ambitious, let's say. He's like, I'll take care of it. Where are your keys? And very willing to please. Much like AI can be. I'll do it. So he took the keys, took the car out back, brought it back about 15 minutes later. And I'm like, oh my God, what did you do? Because there are all these swirl marks, deep swirl marks. I'm like, this is not good at all. I want to talk to the manager. Manager came out, was like, looked at the car, looked at the guy, said, what did you do? He's like, I tried to get all the little wax chips out. I was like, how? What did you do to the car? He's like, I just used a little steel wool and kerosene to try to rub away at all the wax stuff. Oh, God. And the owner of the car wash said something I'll never forget. And I think it applies to AI. He said, Mike, it's okay if you have ambitious people work for you. That's great. It's okay if you have people that make mistakes or in some cases just downright stupid. That's okay. But if you have somebody who's not that bright and ambitious, they will put you out of business. And it's something I think we have to be aware of today with AI. If I were to say, hey, AI, let's say an AI robot could wash all the windows in the Empire State Building, in a couple hours and charge you almost nothing for it, you'd be like, that's fantastic. But how many times would you be able to suffer the fact that, the settings were off a little bit and it broke every window in the Empire State Building? Sorry. So it can do good things at scale. It can do bad things at scale. So we have to prepare for that. We have to know, let's test it a little bit. Let's have it do a couple of windows. Okay, do the rest like that. As opposed to saying, do everything again. Because something may have changed, the settings could have gotten corrupted or changed. And next thing you know, you went from, we were saving all this money. We washed all the windows in the building like every week. And, it was really fast and efficient. But then that one day could undo for years all of the good that it had done. And so there's sort of the double-edged sword of AI.
The thing I think about a lot is how when it comes to using AI, when it comes to experimenting with prompts and things of that nature, precision is the word that kind of comes to mind. Mm-hmm. Is the AI giving me too much? Is the AI giving me not enough? Does it really understand what I'm asking for? And that's gotten better over time. But I still see, whether it be in the form of hallucinations, whether it be in the form of just simply me writing a bad prompt, it seems like precision is still part of the issue in terms of how well AI is going to work for us. Do you see a similar insight, or is that something that is...
Yeah. I mean, it's similar in that it's sort of like how we communicate human to human. Until we get to the point where we just can sort of complete each other's sentences and I know what you're thinking and dreaming even before you tell me, then we've got to be good at communicating. And sometimes we sort of say, okay, well, if we both grew up in the same area, we have the same language and talk in the same way, I might not need to say as much and you'll understand exactly what I mean. But in other cases, we've got people from all over the country, all over the world, working in the same department or same organization. Sometimes you have to be a little bit more specific, clear, and really lay it out just to make sure everybody's got it. And then even so, have them pair it back to you. Okay, tell me what you think you heard me say, and just to make sure we're on the same page. AI is no different because AI doesn't have the things that we grew up with, because the things we grew up with over years, we become just, it's like common sense. Yeah. That if I said, hey, David, make the temperature in the room cooler. You and I know that, the way we normally do that might have been open a window back in your grandparents' time, or today it might be go to the little thing on the wall and make an adjustment to a lower number. AI just knows, okay, goal is lower temperature. So if I remove the roof, boom, done it. It's like, wait, but you took the roof off. Right. Yeah, you said lower the temperature. You didn't tell me what not to do. So, to that degree, we have to be aware that AI doesn't know necessarily common sense. It's going to solve the problem. If you said you wanted a cooler, we made it cooler, but it may not do it in a way that you wanted it done.
Right. Fair enough. And that's also a good point. I always think of what an English teacher once told me: specificity is not a vice. And that's a situation where that very much applies. When you look at the evolution of tech in the 20th century, beginning with the Industrial Revolution, the time frame of the development and adoption of automobiles, the airplane, defense weaponry, computers, all had long arches.
Yeah.
As someone who studies behavioral patterns, what's driving the compressed timeline with generative AI in these few short years? And should we be concerned about that?
So what's driving it simply is the technology itself has the ability to, learn and be trained and improve hourly, daily. The people that make those models and work on these systems that we're all using and experimenting with, they've built it to be able to do things overnight and say, hey, rerun it and train it with this and modify that. And by morning, they have another version. But if we think about things like, aviation, automobiles, tractors, even think about tractors. Think about when tractors first came to be a thing, a true like gas or diesel tractor, and the first guy in the area to have one, let's call him Jeb. Everybody probably looked at Jeb and said, Jeb's a little bit of a jerk. He's showing off. He's got this thing. It's like oxen and horses aren't good enough for him. I'm never going to have one of those infernal things he's got. And then 20, 30 years later, you just talk to those same people, they'll be like, okay, Jeb's still a little bit of a jerk, but I did buy a tractor. We've got 4 now. And it's like, well, what happened? Well, I decided, okay, it made sense. And, so we learned, but we learned over quite a bit of time. Today, it's, David uses some new AI, and by afternoon, everybody else is like, used what? And then by tomorrow morning, they're using it. And by the end of the week, they're like, wait, I can't remember the time before we had and we used this. I've been using it for weeks now. So it's, again, AI moves at a faster pace, and that's the thing that's good about it and something to be cautious about.
Well, speaking of moving at a faster pace, according to a McKinsey report published in March, the use of AI among survey organizations jumped almost 25% from January 2023, which was a couple months after ChatGPT came on the scene, to mid-2024. The use of generative AI among organizations jumped almost 40% in the same time frame. But the skill level for workers is really unclear still. Yeah. What happens when the recognition of AI capability far outpaces their readiness?
I think every organization is a little different, right? So, if we're talking early 23 to 24, hey, January 23, maybe everybody made a New Year's resolution to say we should learn AI and use technology. Or maybe they just got scared that other people seem to be talking about it and seem to be doing things that maybe they thought they weren't. So we better play catch up. But at the end of the day, ChatGPT, when it first, came out for the masses, caught a lot of people off guard. They weren't sure what to make of it or what to do with it. But they eventually realized it's not going away. And yeah, it's not perfect, but it is useful if we know how to use it and start learning. I think we're going to start to see more and more organizations not only, quote, use it or jump into it, but learn what they're not doing well. A lot of it initially was just activity. Mm-hmm. And if you say, okay, what did you achieve with it? Because there's a difference if they said, how many are using it? Yeah, we're using it. How many of you have achieved something with it? What do you mean? We've just played around with it so far and sort of kicked the tires a little bit. But I think more and more, organizations are going to say, okay, how do I measure the ROI of this? And measurement's going to be a really interesting challenge. We don't know how to measure exponential technologies. If I were to say, hey, I'm twice as fast as you, in a car on foot, you'd be like, okay, I know how fast I am, times 2, got it. But if I said 100 times, 1,000, 100,000, a million, a billion, hey, this new model is 1 trillion times faster than the one 3 years ago, we have no idea how to measure it.
Right. I don't want to get too far off tangent or too far ahead, but that makes me think of the Iron Man movies. That makes me think of Jarvis. And and the scenes where Robert Downey Jr. is just sitting there spawning off ideas and just having it, having Jarvis create 3D imagery and, all these designs and everything. And I sort of feel that my own personal usage of ChatGPT and Claude is a little bit like that. I like using it as a sounding board, as a brainstorming tool. Have you found it to be like that for yourself? Do you find yourself maybe catching your own personal limitations on it where you're like, you know what, this is as far as I want to go with the AI. I can take it from here.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it really is to be viewed, I think, as more of a collaborator, a partner. But as most people we collaborate with, they can't do everything we can do. You tend not to have two people that are matched so perfectly in terms of their skill sets are exactly the same and they go and partner on the same task. Most of us in work situations work in a cross-functional team where, hey, we all can do some of these things the same, but we all bring something else to the party. And I think certainly that's with AI. And the way you describe using it as a sounding board is a perfectly useful way to use it. One of the other things I think is going to come about in terms of speed is imagine when we're used to working with humans and we'll give them a list of things to achieve. And what if after every time you said, oh, and find a list of this, they're like, done. And then also though, and calculate and figure out the most of the ROI, done. it's going to make management different, because managers are used to saying, hey, I'm going to give you a bunch of tasks that I think are going to take you a couple of days or a week, which gives me a week to not have to worry about you. Then you'll come back in a week and you'll give me an update. This is great. I get to spend a week while you do work and me waiting for you to come back in a week to give you more tasks. Mm-hmm. Now the manager is going to be like, every task I give, there's the answer. Now what? So it's going to be interesting to see how quickly we can manage.
Back on the topic of how this is affecting industry, the Diplomat's reporting on Asian manufacturing. It says that China is producing smartphones at one phone per second in a fully automated dark factory, while Western manufacturers are still figuring out the basics of AI integration. How do you see the competitive dynamic reshaping between West and East, not just with industrial technology, but how human systems work around that?
Mm-hmm. And I do know of United States-based manufacturers that are, running dark factories. So it's not just an Asian thing, but and again, factories that do make that investment, because it certainly costs a lot of money to set up a dark factory and automate things to that extent. I'm not surprised that Asia is interested, but I'll be surprised if they transition over as quickly as I think the U.S. will in terms of automating things. Why? Because they have a lot more inexpensive labor.
Sure.
They can just throw labor at things. We don't. So we have to use our labor to do the things and manage the process with human intelligence, and not just try to automate all of it. Almost anything that's ever happened throughout humanity, any other innovation, has created pros and cons. And sometimes there are unintended consequences that we don't realize. I think one of the stories I told at the last conference that we were both at, AC, was the story of the woman who 2 weeks before her wedding got in a car wreck, a really small one, really minor one, but enough to deploy the airbags. And while airbags are a good thing, right? Those are good innovation. And she was also wearing sunglasses protected from UV rays, but they didn't protect against shattering. Mm-hmm. And so two good things, airbags and sunglasses that protect from UV rays, turned into being blind in one eye for life. Two good things had an unintended consequence. So we have to be aware of those things. And that's where the futurist in me really comes out, to help understand all these good things are great. All these positive things are wonderful. Where's the hidden danger that we have to at least be aware of? Right. Not to be a naysayer and say that I don't like good things or positive innovations, but let's just know that things that we don't want can also occur from those.
Absolutely. So how do we balance the speed of AI problem solving against new categories of failures? A little bit like that situation. For every good innovation we bring into it, there's a negative consequence of an innovation that had good intentions, but still had a flaw. What concerns you most about organizations racing to implement AI without fully understanding the potential for those kinds of failures?
Yeah. And for here, I would almost say, if we go back to the calculators days, when a calculator first became a thing, you say, okay, well, I'm going to use a calculator, then I'm still good at doing things by hand, and I'm going to double check some of this just to make sure that calculator is doing the right thing. We did the same thing with Excel. I'm not really sure the computers are going to add up right. Let's double check the math here just to make sure. And that worked when you could double check things. But if AI can do something and we believe it did it correctly, looks right, but I haven't validated all of it. But if it did something, let's say in seconds or even minutes, that would take me hours, days, or weeks to validate, might not validate it, might not check. And then we're really at danger, because we don't know, did it really do it right? Was it complete? Did it make mistakes? Did it mess something else up? It did this part, but then it kicked this other data over there. So I think what we're going to quickly learn is that steel and steel, diamond against diamond, that if we're going to use AI to do a task that's important and we want to make sure it's done right, we as a human alone aren't going to be the ones to validate it. I need to have another AI, sort of the AI audit team, come in and say, hey, did this do that thing right? Did it do anything that might have looked a little weird? Or did it do anything that I never did? Or is it about to do something that I've never done? In fact, the home scenario of, hey, cool the house, it's too hot in here, make it cooler. Maybe the double check AI would say, well, the one thing David's never done is remove the roof. And so if the new AI is planning on doing that, we might say, hold it. He's never done that before. Maybe we ask him if he wants us to take the roof off to cool the house down. But what he has done before is change the temperature on that little thing over there on the wall. Okay, why don't we use the things he's done and just automate it for him? We're going to eventually have to develop tools to monitor the tools.
Gotcha. The watchdogs over the watchdogs, I suppose.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. This episode of Problem Solved is sponsored by the Poye Group, a values-based boutique consulting firm that delivers far-reaching, long-term improvements to support your growth. From strategy development and execution to supply chain, cost reduction, and customer experience, their team works side by side with yours to create agile, customized solutions that drive results. With expertise across industries like healthcare, manufacturing, private equity, retail, and government, the Poye Group helps organizations align their teams, accelerate momentum, and achieve sustainable change. Learn more at thepoyegroup.com and unlock your organization's full potential today. Welcome back to Problem Solved. Let's shift to jobs a little bit. The World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report came out earlier this year. It predicts that 92 million jobs will be displaced by 2030, but 170 million new jobs will be created. That's just 5 years from now, and I hate to remind myself of that, particularly because I have a birthday coming up. But the report also claims that 39% of existing skill sets will become outdated in that same time period. To see so much change potentially occur in the next 5 years is pretty daunting and a little scary. How should ISEs or professionals in other fields be thinking about transformation and adaptation, not just technically, but behaviorally?
So it's a great question. The first thing I think we have to realize is that this is a much faster era of change than we've ever experienced. You can look back throughout time, and we've gone through tons of change and figured it out along the way, and tons of change that meant, we don't need that kind of job anymore. But then other jobs came to be, and even automobiles, right? We went from horse and buggy, and some of those jobs transferred. The people that used to maybe care for the horses, now they're caring for the cars and maybe learn a little mechanical stuff. But they had more time to make those transitions than we will. The other thing to know is that it's sort of like entering a tunnel. And you know that you're going to lose jobs in that tunnel, and there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel with new jobs, but you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel until you're in it. Mm-hmm. And humans being humans, we tend to grasp onto new things that seem useful and profitable at a rate that maybe is a little bit too quick. Even think back to like shipping. When somebody says, hey, David, we could take a whole lot of cargo, put it in a really big wooden thing and send it off and trade and make all sorts of money. That sounds great. Do we know if it works? Well, we built a couple. Let's send them out. And then, months or a year later, hey, how'd it work? Well, a bunch of them came back and we lost a bunch of them. What do you mean lost? They don't know where they are? No, they sunk. The cargo, the people, the money, all of it's gone. Oh, wow, that's horrible. We lost how much? Yeah, keep going. So AI is going to be the same. People are going to make mistakes. It's going to cost money. And initially, some of those jobs, if people say, we don't need that anymore, they're later going to realize, wait, why did that stop working? We fired that whole team? Hold on. Can we get some of them back? And the AI do? No, let's hire some of those back and let's course correct. So initially, people will put perhaps too much faith in AI and then realize later, well, it did do a good job of the things we asked it to do, but it didn't do all the other things.
Sure.
Because humans often do things that aren't necessarily documented, but are still useful. When you check out at a restaurant, it's not just, the task of making sure somebody paid their bill. It's thanking them, asking them how their food was, ask them how the kid is. Is Jimmy going to play ball again this year? It's having those connections that cause that person to come back.
Well, and to that note, in an office environment or any employment situation, having interconnectivity, interpersonal relationships with people you work with, I mean, that still carries value that to what you just described, I don't think is necessarily going to be an easy replacement by AI. But I'm wondering how much of that will sort of have weight against the advancement of AI. Is there any kind of behavioral aspects that you've seen in terms of data, documentation, or any notions that you have in general on just what it would take to devalue those interpersonal skills, those interpersonal relationships?
So I think what we're going to find is that, AI will be used for certain things that include the stuff that we didn't want to do anyway.
Right.
For years and years and years, regardless of what job you had and what industry and what company, there were parts of your job where like, oh, please, we got to do that again, and tomorrow. There were parts that we secretly wished we'd never have to do again, ever. And now the horrible thing is a lot of us are getting our wish, but we don't really know what's going to replace it. So it's like, yeah, I know I said I didn't want to do those things anymore, but now I'm starting to worry about, well, if it does all those things and I'm only left with these things, does that mean I have a job or can we work something out? There's some risk there, but we've seen in the research space, for example, that nobody ever liked going through, 100 pages of quotes and transcripts. So the fact that AI can go and say, hey, I summarized it, took me a minute and a half, great. And here's the basic summaries. And we can look over our shoulder and go, that got it right, but it missed this and missed that. But it made our job easier. And now we can spend more of our time discussing, thinking through, doing the critical thinking part of the role, which is more fun. And that discovery is still ours. We can still do it, even if we didn't have to do all the grunt work ourselves.
It sounds like it's a matter really of trade-offs. What trade-offs are we willing to make? What trade-offs do we want to avoid?
Yeah. I would add one modification is that we don't always get to pick all the trade-offs.
True.
Because if your competitors are doing something that gives them an advantage in speed, cost, or quality using AI, it's going to be pretty difficult to say, no, I don't want to make that trade-off.
All right. Is there a preference for collaboration over automation? We've tapped into this a little bit already, but is the idea of an AI co-pilot more or less likely than AI replacing humans in their job? What's your advice for industrial and systems engineers who are tasked with leading AI implementation in those organizations?
Yeah. So, there's a phrase that you've probably heard more lately, human in the loop. And I think that's what we have to seek to establish is to have processes where AI helps do some of the mundane things that it's better suited for. But with a human in the loop to make sure that it didn't make a mistake and then replicate the mistake at scale in a way that we like, ooh, ouch, tough to recover from. Again, the window washing of all the windows in the Empire State Building example. It's great when it works. Hey, look, wow, it worked. Now we're just going to set it and forget it. And then a couple weeks later, what do you mean they broke all of them? But no, well, stop it. Go ahead and hit the stop button before it breaks any. What do you mean it already broke all of them? And you don't need many of those big mistakes where the human wasn't in the loop to realize, hey, let's go going forward. Let's make sure there's a human in the loop and that it is, more of a collaboration arrangement. There's things that aren't even making a mistake as much as it's doesn't understand nuance that we would understand, doesn't understand sensitivities that, might upset a customer, another employee or someone else that, again, the AI just doesn't know those things. And while you can teach it to be more empathetic and polite and compassionate, it doesn't necessarily have the same impact as when a human expresses those concerns. Hey, I'm really sorry the delivery hasn't gotten to you yet, or we messed up on the order. Really sorry, we're going to fix that. Coming from a human tends to mean more than an AI saying, we are sorry, we didn't ship the right thing. We will send the right one. We are apologizing. That's like, it's like, give me a human because I want a human to really have sweated on your end of the equation. And I want that throat to choke, so to speak.
Right. So given what we've discussed about the next 5 years and the potential change to come, what should IISEs and other professionals be preparing for that we're not talking about yet in the AI space? What problems are we at risk of creating that we don't currently see on the horizon?
Sure. So a couple, because I've got a box full. So one is that we've always tended to live in a world where we could truly look at the options we have, the solutions that are available to us. Invite the vendors in to do the dog and pony show and show off what they have, and then make an informed choice. That's going to become harder because every time you're like, okay, we took a look at what's available, now we're going to make it. What do you mean something new is? Okay, well, let's add that. We're just about ready to vote. Give that to me. Okay, now we're ready. What do you mean 5 more just showed up? Okay, I mean, at what point do you cut it off and say, okay, I'm going to analyze for a certain period of time, then I'm going to make a decision, knowing full well that maybe in a month or 6 or a year or two, I'm going to look at what I've chosen going, it sounded good at the time, but boy, they've far surpassed it with some other thing. So we're going to be just a deluge of options and choices. I tell people these days that imagine the things that you're frustrated with at work or as part of a process. And as soon as you identify something you don't like or you wish were better, instantly believe that there is a solution, that AI's already solved it. You just haven't found it yet. And then you go to the equivalent of, Home Depot for AI tools and know that you'll never be able to walk the entire place because they just keep adding more shelves, more aisles, and more stuff.
Sure.
You just have to say, okay, I'm going to give myself this much time to find a solution to the problem that I have and know that either it does exist when I just didn't know it, or the things that they do already have on the shelf can probably be cobbled together to do what I want. Does that make any sense?
No, absolutely. It just sounds like decision fatigue. And It's easier for our brains to just hand it over to the AI and just have it make that decision for us.
Yeah. No, and in some cases it will be. There's some decisions that I really don't need to make.
Right.
If I'm trying to say, hey, pick the cheapest electricity rate for my usage at my home, just do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be able to run everything. Oh, wait, no, these get you because there's a delivery charge. They don't put that in the marketing. And it's going to be able to do all the math and go, yep, this is the one. Great. I don't need to oversee it.
Right. Absolutely. I think the trade-offs, every trade-off has a different weight to it.
Yeah.
Different value to it. And I think that maybe that's the practice we have to get into as human beings, is really making the decision about what is it about this particular task or this particular repetition that I either want to continue doing myself, or what is it that makes me want to give it over to the AI? And I think those are harder questions I think people need to start getting accustomed to asking themselves as this technology evolves.
To build on that, though, I would say that we will pretty soon have AIs of a sort that we authorize to observe like our work. Mm-hmm. And that AI's only purpose will be to say, what's he doing? How's he doing it? Oh, interesting. And keep monitoring all the things we can't.
Let's end here with a couple quick ones. If you were talking to an engineer tomorrow who's being asked to lead an AI initiative in their organization or the company, what's the one piece of behavioral insight you'd want them to understand before they start? What is it that they should be primarily looking out for?
So in terms of behavioral makes me think about how will others, view what's happening and should they be afraid or will they be afraid? And I think that's the number one thing we have to wrap our brains around, is that because of the speed of change, because of the power that we've already seen AI has, even if I say, well, don't worry, it's not human.
Right.
It can pretend to be human. It can be empathetic and do all the things that, we taught to mimic a human. It's not. And so therefore, look at all the things that you can do as a human that it can't do. And maybe it eventually will start to sneak over into my, side of the room, so to speak, and start taking tasks away that we didn't think it could do. So I think we just have to reassure people that there's always going to be room for humans in the loop. And there will be new jobs that we can't even imagine now, because we're only entering AI tunnel now, an AI mountain. There's going to be a light at the end of that tunnel. And there's going to be all sorts of new jobs that we never imagined going in. Mm. And it's a little unsettling that we don't have the new job before we give up the old job. You sort of have to have a little bit of, faith that it's going to happen. But it's the same kind of faith that we now have when it comes to like traveling. If I said, hey, Dave, we're going to go to, pick a big city, Chicago or San Fran or, Detroit or something. We wouldn't have to say, well, it's going to some place I've never been. We'll have to pack enough food and everything to survive the trip, and fuel and medicine in case. No, we're not settlers from like, the early 1800s.
It's not the Oregon Trail. I get it.
So we got to the point where, at least in the U.S. and going to major cities, we assume, well, if I forgot extra socks, I can buy them. If we forgot XYZ, they'll probably have that there. We don't yet understand that AI is going to be the same thing, that we don't have to spend 23 hours a day trying to learn about AI and never, ever catch up, because you won't. You do have to spend enough time to be conversant and leverage it at least as well as the next guy. Right. So some of the things I say is we're going to go on this journey. It doesn't matter whether you wanted to or not. And just know that you're an important part of the journey, because technology is what technology is. It's meant to improve humans. It's made by humans to do the things that other humans think we want done. And increasingly, it's going to do the things that we tell it to do, because it's going to be a general purpose AI that can do anything we ask it to do, within certain reason. So it's there to help us, but we have to learn how to use it. And the more we sit back and go, nope, I'm afraid, I'm not going to do it, that's the dangerous situation. If you really think you can resist it and not lean into it, that's going to be challenging. That's going to be a hard place to be, because everybody else is going to get the benefit of it.
Right.
But if you don't have another AI or systems in place to watch over it, you might wake up one day and it will, at scale, at amazing speed, for not much cost, have totally destroyed everything you have.
So to that end, finally, our last question, given the speed and scale that we've discussed, are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? Where do you fall on the prediction scale of AI?
Yes. I'm at both ends of the scale. I see all the promise and potential, and I see what it's going to be able to do for people that really need help. Mm-hmm. I mean, imagine AI being able to, assist, human doctors in diagnosing and treating things that otherwise would be tough to treat or tough to diagnose, but also to provide a level of care that maybe some people couldn't afford, or live in a place where, they never would have access to that. So I think it's going to really help. And to the extent of, like I said, like having it choose the best power, maybe we don't select power once a year. Maybe I get to select it once an hour, and AI can say, oh, boom, boom, boom. I can arbitrage, and hey, we're going to hold off on the dishwasher because prices are whatever, but I'll start it tonight. Don't worry. Dishes will be done by morning. So that's great. But we have to prepare for a world that's going to be faster than we ever thought, and do great things, but has the potential to really mess things up at scale in a big way. Yeah. And we've seen, not AI doing it, but we've seen, hey, what happens when, everybody's, ID and passwords, or, for something like Netflix or something that's all in this one server. Oops. They got a hold of all of it? Really? Uh-oh. AI is going to be able to make those mistakes like not even breathing hard, So we just have to become more resilient and more prepared to make sure that there's humans along the way that say, okay, let's double check. Let's run a small little. Does that go okay? Now let's run a bigger batch. We're going to have to do it in stages.
Well, hang on, everybody. I guess is all we can say. Mike Courtney, founder of Aperio Insights, ethnographer, and futurist. Mike, we greatly appreciate your insights and certainly appreciate your time.
Enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
A huge thank you to Mike Courtney of Aperio Insights for sharing his wisdom on how we can navigate AI's rapid evolution with purpose and foresight. A special thanks to our episode sponsor, the Poye Group, boutique consultants unlocking organizational potential through results-driven solutions. Learn more at thepoyegroup.com. For more conversations like this, follow Problem Solved wherever you get your podcasts, and connect with us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and at IISE.org. This has been Problem Solved, the IISE podcast. Every great solution is a story worth telling.